Hello, everyone. I welcome you properly. If you are in the Americas, I wish you a good morning. If you are in Geneva or in the rest of Europe or in Africa, I wish you a good afternoon. And if you are in Asia or in Australia, good evening and good night. I'm very happy to have all of you here. This is a very exciting opportunity for us as the workshop of digital strategy development. Because 2 years ago when we started, we were roughly a dozen people, and now we have 285 registrations. So I'm very happy to see that the interest in our topic is huge. Of course, the pandemic has a huge impact on how we perceive our digital lives and how we perceive the opportunities that rise out of the use of our digital tools and within our museums. But nevertheless, 285 registrations and already now almost 70, now more than 70 participating members. That is quite a great thing. So I'm very happy to have all of you here. In our workshop, we would like, of course, first to introduce you who we are and what that's all about, what we understand of a good digital strategy, how we define the digital strategy, and what the purpose of a digital strategy is, in our opinion. And then we are going to proceed with the main topic of our session, which is museum responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. We decided to invite a number of keynote speakers from different museum professions and to ask them to give us an insight into their work and into the challenges they face at the moment, maybe also to give us some recommendations what would prove to be viable for them. After these keynote speeches, we are going to proceed within our teams. All of the teams have their own topics. We have the team number one, led by Maya Guan-Svi, who is the head of the strategy comparison and best practice analysis team. Then we have team number two, led by Sonja Nolte, who is our mastermind for stakeholder analysis. And the team number three, which is headed by the co-chair of this working group, who is Christian von Jodi, from Hungary, who leads the team checklist development. The checklist is the core product of what our working group is producing. The purpose of this checklist is to provide museums assistance in the process of digital strategy development. And it should entail both ideas that we collect from other museum professionals and results from the other working groups that work within CIDOC. As I think I already said a few seconds ago, we were founded 2018 in Heraklion. We proceeded in Kyoto. In this first year, we have spent a lot of time at discussing what we understand as a digital strategy. We came up with this idea of the comprehensive digital strategy, which I will explain later. We split up in 3 teams, which means that we still work hand in hand. The working group is not split up as itself. It just shares work, splits work. We have further defined 9 key topics that digital strategies address or don't address. By knowing these 9 key topics, we can understand and compare digital strategies more easily, because there are some museums who rather write a digital communications strategy and some rather write a digitization plan, but all of them call it digital strategy. So that's a little bit what we have to struggle with when we compare digital strategies. So having these 9 key topics allows us to say, well, digital strategy A is rather one that addresses the topics 1, 2, and 4, and the strategy number B, the strategy B is one that rather addresses the topics 6, 7, and 8. But for us, the optimum would be to to have a strategy which addresses all 9 topics. So this is what we're going to suggest with the checklist that Christian von Jodi's team is developing on the basis of the products of the other 2 teams and of course of the recommendations of the other working groups of CIDOC. Having said that, I would like to introduce you to Peter. Peter is the director of a museum, the City History Museum of Neustadt. Neustadt is a small town, and so is his museum. He has a permanent staff of 3 who are all together responsible for cataloging, exhibition planning, loans, restoration orders. The work usually is done by externals, of course, transport, communications, facility management, and all the other challenges in museum life. Peter has very limited resources, and he has no time to write a digital strategy, he says. Indeed, he's convinced that museums are places that center around the real, authentic objects. He disapproves of virtual exhibitions, and he thinks mobile phones should be switched off when visitors enter the museum. For that, I actually like Peter. But please, don't be Peter. Trouble starts when somebody wants to find out about opening times of the museum and searches them online. A big search engine provides such information on their maps site, and by the way, without asking you. Unfortunately, they are not correct anymore because Peter never cared to update them. Peter is missing a concept for digital communications. This is also why his colleague had to give his private email address to a visitor who wanted to donate a one-of-a-kind 200 years old family heirloom to the museum. The potential donator wasn't sure if he had really spoken to a museum professional or just to some random volunteer who made himself important. Also, when the colleague tried to contact the donator afterwards, or the donator-to-be, the colleague's email had no standardized signature, which would clearly indicate his position within the museum. So in the end, the item was never donated. Well, instead of going on with the story, I will summarize just a few further problems of Peter's museum. One of the colleagues recently has spread unwillingly a virus to several partners of the museum by forwarding unchecked files he had received from another potential donator, which just shows that Peter's museum is missing IT safety guidelines. Peter's colleagues recently had to go into home office due to the COVID pandemic, but none of them had access to the museum's database at home. Next thing, plenty of object photos are stored on a hard drive, but they were never uploaded to the database simply because the colleague with the camera never had access to the database. Well, then there was the moment when they were wondering which artifacts were shown on a special exhibition 10 years ago. But that wasn't possible because nobody had cared to save these information. Peter's museum is missing objects because people who relocated the objects from the exhibitions to the depots had no access to the database where relocations should have been noted. And then they just forgot about the change of location. Peter lost a lot of provenance information because Peter's self-written access database has no data fields where they can be saved. Relevant objects are scanned over and over again, scanned or digitized in a different way, because there is no digitization plan. Rather, digitization happens randomly, without predefined quality criteria, and with inappropriate hardware. Oh, whatever happens in social media, it's completely out of control and out of sight for Peter. Peter's letter archive ends somewhere in the 1990s because Peter never thought about collecting digital artifacts such as emails. Peter permanently struggles to find media files in his museum, which his museum has produced or purchased in the past. And since there's no digital asset management, Peter spends hours at searching for the files. And unfortunately, over and over again, these files are lost simply because they were not properly saved, because there's no plan for long-term preservation, and because Peter never thought about long-term licenses or even operating systems that he might need in the future. But I think it's not necessary to continue with Peter's story. It's so exaggerated that it wouldn't happen nowadays this way, would it? Like 20 years after we started talking about digital transformation, all of this is unthinkable today. Well, there's one thing that we should all understand. Digital change happens, whether you want it or not. It's a little bit like the weather. You look at it, you think about what you want to do, and then you dress. Maybe you will choose equipment. You choose very different clothes when you go to the beach, to the opera, or skiing in the mountains. Don't panic about getting dressed. It's actually fun. You can look good when you do it right. You can be comfortable if you choose the proper clothes. You can do great things like skiing or windsurfing if you have the correct equipment. You simply have to know what you want to do and what matches yourself. And this is what I mean with digital nonchalance. Accept digital change and as the new normal and simply play it. I'm getting these two slides things here. When we had our first year as a strategy development working group, we discussed a lot about different things, and eventually we realized that we were permanently talking about different things. And we realized we have to write a definition. We chose to have one more formal part and one more qualitative part. So the formal part is the real definition. And this is very broad. What we understand as a digital strategy is really an all-encompassing approach. It's the planning for all the digital assets, resources, and activities and tools that serve the institutional goals. But nevertheless, this is not sufficient if you want to understand what a digital strategy does. We have requirements for a museum's digital strategy. It should outline how and why a museum creates digital assets and the resources and tools used to manage and provide access to these. In order to be fit for purpose, a digital strategy should be based on evaluation. One should evaluate a museum's state of digital development, so you have to know where you are at the moment and what you already have, and what different needs we have within the institution. This is also why the stakeholder analysis team is so important. It is to be updated frequently in order to stay responsive to changes within the museum, to changes within the digital universe, and to the audience expectations and needs. In the long term, we recommend to make digital strategy development a part of the general museum strategy. So what is the purpose of a digital strategy really? The main purpose is to accept digital change, as I just tried to explain. It is to make your institution understand what digital change means for it, that you understand and assess your digital environment, that you know what digital tools are already used in your institution, to keep record of the types of files you keep in your museum. And that's not just in object documentation, that's basically in all fields of museum work, be it the exhibitions, be it restoration, be it communications, be it former exhibition catalogs, you name it. The next step is to master digital change. And to master digital change really means that you explore and use new technologies that help you with your work. You don't hop on trends, but you use those that you need. You spend the resources you have wisely. I'm repeating myself, don't hop on trends. Hopping on trends may be nice for a short moment, but it may cost you a fortune, and afterwards you forgot to do long-term preservation, and you lose quite a number of digital files. You have to learn from others' mistakes. Don't forget about long-term preservation. Show to your colleagues that the new technologies facilitate their work and optimize their output. Motivate. Empower your colleagues to use the new technologies. Train. Make sure that the digital information are accessible to all those who might need them. Give access. Check your workflows, define the intended use of digital tools, and check the procedural rules in your museum. And that's the point, coordinate. The third purpose of a digital strategy is to further induce digital change where it helps to improve your museum's work. Is there a need to start digital effects? Maybe one of the questions you have to ask yourself. This may not be the case for a glass museum, but it may definitely be the case for a contemporary history museum. Are the digital files that belong to your museum, for example, in documentation or digital objects, securely stored? Do you have a digital preservation plan to safely store your files for further generations? Are there means for authentic display of digital files, such as operating systems, screens, etc.? Do you maybe need new staff like digital restorators, programmers, admins for your servers? Can you reach new audiences by the use of digital tools? Also think of linked open data, of CRM, web portals, etc. Can you use your museum's community to harvest knowledge about the collections? So use potentials without your museum, on the outside of your museum. What makes a digital strategy good? Well, the good strategy is comprehensive. A larger American art museum introduces its digital strategy with a declared goal to offer website visitors a rich digital and cultural experience that will in turn attract them to the museum. It follows a text structured by 3 chapters before visiting, during the visit, and after the visit. Due to the concentration on visitor experience, this paper could also be called Strategy for Online Communications. Links to other fields of museum activities such as digitization, documentation, long-term preservation, all of that is missing. So this approach is too narrow for myself, and I think in all of our opinion. Good digital strategy should manage digital change anywhere where it pointfully occurs in a museum. Then a good digital strategy is based on assessment. Another museum title is more promising in this regard, Digital as a Dimension of Everything, and then develops a text that declares digital change as an imperative on all levels of museum life. This may read bewildering to all those who see the museum, like Peter, primarily as a physical place that can be visited and thus goes far beyond the digital experience. A good digital strategy creates digital normality without overemphasizing it and where it doesn't belong. It prevents a museum from unwisely joining on trends. It matches with the general political self-positioning and with the working strategy of a museum. It is the result of an analysis of the own institution, the museum's neighborhood, and set priorities when handling digital change. A good digital strategy defines workflows. Which museum professional hasn't lived the situation that the newly made object photos of the communications department don't match with the quality standards of the documentation department, or the other way around? More often than necessary, the result is that objects are moved several times in just a few months, just to be photographed over and over again. I have already given this example with Peter. With a general definition of quality criteria in the field of digitization and well-organized workflows, including rules for participation and dissemination, such inefficiencies can be prevented, and this will actually be very good for your object. A good digital strategy respects the different needs of the museum departments, helps at identification of mutual interests, and the synchronization of connected workflows. New concepts such as the collecting of digital artifacts or digital restoration are barely mentioned in the digital strategies published so far. If in the field of military history museums there are only small collections of war letters from recent conflicts compared to the large war letter collections we have from the world wars, this is not due to a lack of communication between the soldiers and their families, but due to the change of media. A timely digital strategy should provide for solutions on how to collect and safeguard emails, chat protocols, or data from messenger services, which indeed is not done by simply storing screenshots from the messages in question. The collecting of digital and physical artifacts may have to be combined. For instance, when to be collected contemporary cars come along with system data, which require specific interpretation and operating systems for authentic display. Digital collecting may bring up legal and software development challenges. For instance, when time-restricted licenses are structurally integrated to a program that may prevent it from running when the regular license is void. Often virtual exhibitions are misperceived as key elements of digital change in museums, simply because they may be the most visible element of a new digital offering and because those exhibitions are perceived publicly as progressive and state-of-the-art. Indeed, many museum professionals are complaining that virtual exhibitions are the largest part of a budget that was meant to help dealing with digital change, while the respective institution has still no plan to prevent the loss of digital artifacts through data corruption, when they have no proper solutions for home office or other challenges that we are facing at the moment. A good digital strategy defines priorities pertinently. Eventually, a digital strategy cannot stand on its own. It has to be part of an overall museum strategy and match the political goals and identity of an institution. A comprehensive museum strategy entails a digital strategy. A digital strategy should at the same time be spark to ignite overdue modernization processes and a permanent plan to make the institution responsive to changes in its digital environment. A good digital strategy helps to establish normality within the handling of digital change, which already affects museum work in permanence. I think you've heard enough of me. When we said that we want to have a permanence in assessing the museum environment, this also means that we have to take decisions that may not be comfortable, decisions that may be timely, that may simply have to take place at a certain time. And the COVID pandemic is one of those moments. The COVID pandemic has forced us to change the way we live, the way we work, and the way we interact. So museums who were quick at responding to this have definitely a big advantage in their daily work. And I have here the great privilege to introduce a few speakers to all of you who have done that in one or the other way. And our idea was that we give all of our speakers one title for the presentation. And this is Lessons Learned, How the Pandemic Changed My Work. We chose representatives from different museum professions. We have one curator, one collections manager, one restorator, one communications officer, and one educations officer. And they will all tell us in a few moments how they lived the pandemic in their own work environment, and what responses they found, how they reacted on it. Which worked out well, and maybe which decisions were not the best, and what they can recommend to all of us. The first speaker that I would like to introduce to you is Zsuzsanna Toronyi. Zsuzsanna is the director of the Hungarian Jewish Museum and Archives. In addition to leading an internationally renowned institution, she regularly works as a researcher and university professor. Zsuzsanna participated in the Judaica Europeana project as a project partner. Zsuzsanna, please, the floor is yours. I think you have to unmute and Dominic will activate you.
Okay, I am activated. Thank you. Thank you for having me in this very important discussion. So it's possible to share some slides. Okay, so I would like to share my slides if it's possible, just to let you know about our institution. Okay, now I can. Okay, so I would like very shortly summarize our activities during the lockdown and some remarks how we lived before this pandemic. So our institution is very interesting because it's not maintained by the state, but it is a private museum maintained by the local Jewish community, the Federation of the Hungarian Jewish Communities. And this is a combined institution, a museum and an archive. A museum is one of the earliest Jewish museums in the world, so it was established at the beginning of the 20th century. And this is one of those few which still operated during the war and up until today. The archive part is is also very important because, as I assume, this is the only one which contains the whole collection of the community from the beginning of the community up until today. We have around 10,000 items, all fully digitized and available online, and a half kilometer of archival stuff, which includes also the contemporary records of the community, including the digital born records, which is, I can so say that this is the newest challenge for the archives, how to preserve the digital born content. So we were, in the last year, we were the most visited museum in Hungary, thanks to closings, and thanks to our position. We are located next to the world famous Dohány Street Synagogue, so it attracts more visitors, of course. 90% of them were tourists from abroad, so it is a huge difference between the last year and today, because now we have to concentrate our source community, the local Jewish community, and the local visitors, of course. We have around 500 researchers for the archive, because it's a very important place to research the local Jewish histories. And we have a relatively small staff, 25 employees up until today. So for the visitors, we had a visitor app, which is called Mile, which is a abbreviation of our name. So this you can find on Google Play or in the Apple Store. So it provides some detailed information for the exhibited objects and some sounds and other media, which is not easy to display in the museum space. We are always dealing with digital humanities, which is a very interesting challenge, especially for us, because we have to explain how to understand a Judaica object, which is very often written in a obscure lettering and contains unknown elements for the general public. So we can try to make them attractive and interesting enough to get the visitors closer and closer to this culture or civilization. So, and we have, of course, because we are also an archive, so we have a huge collection already digitized and available online, including community documents in Hebrew, in Hungarian, and in German, of course, because this is the 3 main languages of the community. So this is close to 500,000 pages, and researchers can carry out historical research online, which is very important even today. So the digitization before this lockdown, we had only a digitization policy, and we had some content selection criteria, which is absolutely collapsed, because now we have to serve the researchers and we can digitize randomly on demand, of course. So if someone wants to research our collection, we can quickly digitize anything and put them online for the researchers. We were partners of different international cooperations. The most important was the Judaica Europeana almost 10 years ago. Now we are participating in the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, which is again mainly based on the archival stuff. So we are digitizing archival content for this project. So, and the lockdown. So it started at the beginning in March. And we are still closed, so we didn't open for the summer because our spaces are very tiny, so we can't secure the healthy environment for the visitors. So we are still at home. Everyone, the whole staff is at home, and we had to find out how to work from home. Our motto is that everything about the Jewish Museum is open except the museum. So we are still working, we are trying to provide information, and our main goal was to stay visible for the public and to stay connected with the community, because we are a community museum. So it's, for us, it's very important to provide some information and content and entertainment for the local Jewish community, of course. And we have to continue our professional work. So we have loan agreements, and so as a museum is working, of course, and we have to secure the preservation of the objects in the closed museum. So it's also very important how to manage the condition of the objects. And it's very important to collect something about this very important time period. So we are now in an international cooperation introduced by the National Library of Israel, and we are thinking about together how to collect the ephemera and the COVID-related historical evidences, not only digital-born evidences, but every kind of possible museum artifact. So how to stay visible during the lockdown? Our strategy was to renew our website, which was a little bit outdated at the beginning of the COVID, and we had enough time to work on it because it's easy to work from home. So now we have a new media stream, social media stream, so we are trying to attract as many visitors online as possible. And the social media, of course, so it became extremely important to stay connected with the community. So we have to provide and every type of platform some important content from our collection. And we try to create some online video tour guides because so we have a huge collection already digitized. We had the recordings of the audio guides, so we try to mix them and we try to create homemade videos, of course, because there is no professional technical stuff at home. But now we have enough time maybe and more strategic thinking to create some more professional videos or a new platform, and we will try to organize online guided tours inside the museum building. So it is under development up until today, but I am very optimistic. So how to stay connected with the community? We are always active members of the community, so we can stream our candle lightings and some museum organized community events. So for example, tomorrow we will light the Hanukkah candles together from the museum using an old Hanukkah menorah, and so we will stream it and we will invite the audience to be with us online, of course. And we have a new newsletter, which is more like a magazine because there are no events in the museum. So we have to entertain the public some historical facts and information. And that was very important and interesting that the family research, which is one of the main activity of our archive, this genealogy, it intensified increasingly. So everyone who stayed at home tried to find some more information about the family, and they reached us, of course. And so this was the main working activity for half of the staff to have them online, based on the digitized content, of course, mainly. And we try to collect online, so the COVID-related ephemera, and not only the COVID-related, because this general cleaning, the closed families, everyone, not everyone, of course, but many of them find out that there are old Judaic objects at home or important artifacts to be donated to the Jewish Museum. So we got many important and nice artifacts during the lockdown. And in the next week, I will get a huge collection of rabbinical papers again. So I'm very happy to have this huge development of our collection during this very hard time. So professional work is as always, so we can work from home, so we can develop our collection database. All of our content is now available online. which is very important. And we can work on the archival databases, of course, not only the archival stuff, the papers and the documents, but the Jewish heritage buildings and the Jewish monuments. We are creating a new database for it. And we can digitize on demand, of course, because if someone wants to research something which is closed inside the building, so we can digitize it and send them in a digital format. And we can continue our museum education work, of course. And we can collect every kind of new type of Judaica. For example, this face mask, which was crafted or created for a bar mitzvah during the lockdown. So there are international networking groups to have this kind of collection. The National Library of Israel and the Association of European Jewish Museums are always working on this type of shared collection. And how to work with the colleagues. Christian asked me about my maybe a few things which we continue after the lockdown. So we started to work on the Facebook workplace, which I can recommend, of course, because it is a new way of working together, and we developed an appropriate workflow, I hope so. So we can discuss and chat. So it is, in some cases, the colleagues could work better together online than we had in the offices. It's a very interesting experience, but it's true that we are somehow closer, even we are all separated. So this is some data about the homepage traffic. Maybe many of you experienced that the online interest was at the peak at the beginning of the lockdown. So it's not only my experience. So we have to keep it somehow. So after we can return and reopen the museum, hopefully in early summer, we have somehow to continue our online work, our social media presence, and to work together on the Facebook, because it seems to be a good way to work together. So thank you for your interest.
Thank you so much, Zsuzsa, and especially since this was really short notice that you jumped in. That's perfect. We're very happy that you're here with us. I will share my screen again in order to introduce our next speaker. Has it worked? Now it should have worked. Thumbs up? Is it there? Yes. Our next speaker is Alexandra Chubaty. I know her for 3 years, I think, by now. Alex was with us when we founded this working group in Heraklion. She has a long working experience in various positions with Museums Victoria, mainly as a collections manager, but also as a registrar, a database project officer, and an archivist. She will also introduce herself now, because I've already seen her presentation. Australia is 10 hours ahead of us, so it's 1 o'clock in the night at the moment. And she asked us if it's fine that she sends her presentation as a video file, which of course it is. She will then see the recorded session tomorrow and join in the debate, because this workshop is not over when it's over. We will continue our work and we will stay in touch. And so whatever we do today is something for the future, not just for today. Dominic, are you ready to start the video? Then I'll stop my screen presentation.
Sorry, little problem, but it's coming. Yes. Yes.
Hello, everyone.
as far as I can see, we have more and more attendance in our working group. Do you see that, Jan? We have already 72. It's rising, yeah. Maybe if we have the technical problem, we could switch to the next and then play it later.
My name is Alex Chubaty,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm sorry that I can't join you at the CIDOC conference this year and this digital strategy workshop in real time, as the time difference between Europe and Australia makes it quite difficult. I'm the collections manager at the Melbourne Cricket Club, or the MCC, based in Melbourne, in the state of Victoria. And the club is based at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, or the MCG. If there are any lovers of cricket out there, you will know that the MCG is renowned for hosting international test series. But we also have an important library that is used by sports researchers and journalists all over the world, and a collection of over 100,000 objects. Our largest holdings are of objects related to Australian cricket, Australian rules football, a very big sporting code in our state, and the 2 Olympic Games held in Melbourne and Sydney. As the collections manager, I am responsible for the management of museum, library and archives collections held by the MCC Club Services and Heritage Department. I manage a small team of collection specialists, which include a loans registrar, cataloguers and a collection access officer. And until recently, we had project officers working on a collection and loan documentation project. I oversee the storage, care, movement and access to these collections, both internally and externally. In the year leading up to February of this year, I also managed a large object deinstallation project in our Australian Sports Museum to ready the space for a major refurbishment, and at the completion of this, the museum reopened to the public at the end of February. Unfortunately, like most museums in Australia, we then had to close 2 weeks later due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and all staff were required to work from home until further notice from the following week. This, of course, meant that all museum operations work ceased and all hands-on work involving the museum, library and archive collections, some of this being museum installation completion tasks, had to be put on hold. Therefore, with only a few days' notice, we needed to identify and prepare for all the work that could be done from our homes, accessing the MCC's network servers and all the relevant digital content available there. We actually relished the opportunity to use this time to undertake a range of documentation tasks that had been postponed. These included creating new workflows in our collection management system to manage objects on display and then importing the relevant data, a range of record enhancement and update projects, reviewing and revising a ream of collection policies and procedures, and writing instructions for new procedures like photography in our new studio, updating museum and library cataloguing guidelines. But other things that we were hoping to get our teeth into, so to speak, such as reviving an item-level cataloguing project of our archives, which relied on physical access to our archives, had to pivot. We had to find other ways to move forward with work on the archives that could utilise existing digitised material. We were fortunate in that part of one of our series of our archives, a collection of letters to and from the Melbourne Cricket Club Committee's president from the late 19th century, had been digitised, and we began a focused transcription project. As we moved further into the pandemic and many of the club's activities, such as sporting and other events, were cancelled, many of the club's other staff members were forced to work heavily reduced hours. And in order to maintain engagement and morale, we invited people in these circumstances to take part in this transcription project, preparing individual pages for each volunteer to work on, and notation instructions and a style guide for their transcriptions. This proved very popular, so we created a different project to engage another group of people who suddenly found themselves out of work: our volunteer museum guides and customer service officers. Many of these volunteers were elderly and have vast interest and knowledge of Australian cricket and Australian Football League teams of the past, and we thought they might like to examine a large donated collection of glass slides of various football teams from the early to mid 20th century and identify individual players and the sporting grounds they played on. Now, of course, we weren't asking them to do this from the slides themselves, but by browsing images of the slides that had been published on our online collections catalogue, and noting this information in the comments field that was available on each of the slides' object entries. This really sparked interest amongst this group, and they contributed a lot of information. So as a result, we have managed to add to our knowledge base of this collection. I'm sure most museums this year realise the value and importance of having their collections available to view and research online, and they have had to turn to other environments to keep presenting collection and education programs in an innovative way. But online collection content has also been invaluable for marketing, communications and social media departments in large and small institutions to promote their collections. So this year, I have been providing monthly examples of objects in our collection that relate to a particular sporting event that is either on or would be on, say for the pandemic at that time. I've been providing these to our marketing officer, who has been writing frequent social media posts about them, adding links to relevant pages on our online catalogue, and if they are on display in the new Australian Sports Museum, highlighting this even more. We have never had this much social media exposure to our collection. These few projects demonstrate some of the worthwhile things that we have had the time to really develop this year that enhance and promote our knowledge of our collections. But as you can see, it really has hinged on the fact that we already had quite a lot of digital content available to us. So we were very fortunate and we could really go for it. But it highlights the need to invest more time in creating this content, basically in developing a digital content strategy in all aspects of our work, really working in the paperless office. All museums, big and small, just need the optimal infrastructure and resources to do it. So to finish off, I'd like to add that in Victoria, museums only opened up to the public again 2 weeks ago, after they were shut while we had a second wave of COVID-19 in July, but which we have now overcome. So I hope that we can continue these important digital projects, even as we return to our usual operational activities. Thank you.
Wonderful. Excellent. Also, Alex was there very short notice, and what I always like about her, that she's always full of ideas. Whenever you talk to her, she always has plenty of things that she wants to do and that somebody could do. And I especially like this idea to have a community involvement for her club's community, where she simply allowed people to transcript letters, and thus she involves the whole club that partly is in the home office or completely is in the home office. Maybe we can discuss some of these approaches later. We also have scheduled an open debate for the third session, and I think we are so well in time that we might even get some time to discuss before the break. But now I have the privilege to introduce Andreas Weisser to you. I met Andreas this year during a conference where he gave an excellent presentation on how to write digitization strategies. So not the digital strategy, but the digitization strategy, how to turn something analog into something digital. One of his many fields of interest are time-based media. Andreas works as a freelance restorator for various institutions, amongst others for the Pinakothek der Moderne in Munich, I believe. I'm glad to give the floor to Andreas. So finish the screen presentation and mute myself.
So thank you very much, and hello everybody. First I want to say thank you to Jan for the invitation to this short and inspiring talk of the other participants. So my name is Andreas Weisser. Apparently the name you may see on the screen is not correct. So my name is Andreas Weisser, and I work as a conservator for time-based media, as Jan told you already, in Munich. And currently I'm working part-time, 50%, at the Bayerische Staatsgemäldesammlung at the Dörner Institute, where I am responsible for the conservation and restoration of all time-based media artworks at the Pinakothek der Moderne and Museum Brandhorst. In my free time, I work as a freelance conservator and consultant for digitization and preservation of audiovisual media. Jan asked me to speak about how did COVID change the way of working in the last couple of months from my perspective. So for me, It was a very sad and remarkable moment at March the 18th when I was wandering through the Pinakothek der Moderne, shutting down all media artworks, not knowing when I will turn them on again. So you can imagine that I left that day with a very hard feeling of sadness. But on the positive side was that the Bayerische Staatsgemäldesammlungen switched very fast to a hybrid way of working and communicating. So some of my colleagues worked from home, some worked like before from the office. Since we had moved our whole IT infrastructure into the cloud just a couple of months ago, everybody was able to access emails, intranet, and relevant data. That was a big advantage compared to the time before when we only could work from our offices. Now we learn to organize the work into things which can be done online and things where we had to be at the office or in the lab or in the depot. After this all had settled, I think a lot of my colleagues, including me, sort of enjoyed that we had not to prepare the next exhibition or go to a courier transport bringing an artwork to another museum. We were able to concentrate on projects which had been at the end of our own to-do lists. So I started to check every artwork for its condition and if all relevant information are in place. During that, I learned a lot about our database and that it's really important to have it as a central hub for working for all things related to the artworks. Our public relations department started at the same time a campaign with Instagram video walks and Twitter events and Facebook collections to keep in touch with our audience and friends. And same did we as conservators to help to understand that the work is going on and what we are doing currently at the closed museums. So if you ask me what lessons we have learned during that period as an employed conservator, if we would not have been able to instantly shift from office to home office, it would have been very hard to keep the business running. This means that a working, reliable, secure, and accessible digital infrastructure is mandatory. It's the key for all what comes next. Subsequently, this means that everything should be accessible in digital form, artworks, metadata, database. If you didn't start yet, do it very soon. So if you don't have a digitization plan, start now. Or at least start now to think about it. Start to check what parts of your institution are still completely analog or disconnected, and check your database. Is it accessible from remote? Does it contain all relevant information you need to work from remote? Another thing is, I personally had this experience, you work harder when you are at home office. You get more things done. So every boss, I think, should not worry about home office. Your staff will work, not sleep. But you need a new way of communication to hold contact to your colleagues and to check if everybody is on the same way and on track. If you are on management level, please consider to include workshops and webinars for your staff to enable constant training online. Try to motivate your colleagues and to introduce virtual coffee breaks on a regular basis. In my private practice, the situation was a little different. My colleague and I work from our offices at Munich and Berlin. We are used to work remote and online, so this was nothing new for us. But in March, this was kind of an advantage because our digital infrastructure was already set. During March, it felt as if everyone was holding their breath for a while. It felt like a ghostly silence. No calls coming in, no emails of clients, no conferences, no exhibitions. But after then, we realized that the people started, as I did in my work at the Dörner Institute, to dig in their own to-do lists and to start working on projects they had in mind for a long time. But maybe these projects never started because they didn't have the time to start them. In our private practice, we have two main clients, private collections and public collections on the one side, and on the other side, archives which have audiovisual or analog holdings. yeah, you can only see me because I don't have presentation. Goran. In our private practice, so we work for these two different clients. And some of the private collections we work for started to buy new artworks like there was no COVID crisis at all. Since we are usually integrated into the purchase process by consulting them what kind of data to acquire, which spare parts to source, how to ship the artworks and so on, we had a lot of coordinating and joining video conferences with galleries and artists. And so this was all digital. Here it also proved that without reliable digital infrastructure, you are lost. You need a fast internet connection down and upstream, and you need a cloud service to share documents and work together with professionals all over the world. Our clients from the archive side also started to plan the next digitization projects. And since we are specialized in evaluation and condition reporting of analog media and in preparing tenders for digitization, this was a little more complicated since traveling to the media and to the client wasn't that easy anymore. But during summer, this was also possible again, and so business kept going. We were busy almost the whole summertime and prepared tenders for our clients. On the other hand, we felt a strong demand for online tutorials and trainings. We were booked for workshops with clients via Zoom or Teams more often than the time before. So lessons learned as a private practice. Maybe the same as in the museum. You need a digital infrastructure, plus you need digital tools to work, and these tools have to be reliable. And yeah, what we learned also is that a lot of archives still are at the beginning of digitization projects, but the window is slowly closing because the media degrade, get older and older, and it gets harder to find skilled service providers for a quality transfer. So if you still are at the beginning of your digitization project, you should think about to do it now. And for that, online training is highly appreciated. A lot of people use the time during lockdown for educating themselves with tutorials, online courses, webinars, and e-conferences. I think this is a new field and a new way of connecting people like this meeting here. All over the world. Our concern for the next year is that the budgets of the public sector will face deep cuts. So I think the next 2 or 3 years will be hard for freelance workers in the cultural sector since projects will be smaller. In the end, for us, it was a very thrilling year. It was a good year to concentrate on new things, to rely on strong partners, which is very important, and to work together with our clients on digitization projects. But we hope that funding will go on next year and people start to develop digital strategies for their museums and collections and stay up to date. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask or contact me via mail or now, and get digital, stay safe and healthy, and bye.
Thank you, Andreas. It's not a shame if your institution has not started digitization yet, but it's a shame if you still don't get it and you're not thinking about it and you don't start it at the moment. It's not a shame if you don't have the staff to do it, because you have every museum, every institution has a preset staff, and new tasks never are planned when you have a human resources infrastructure. And this is why I think that people like Andreas are so enormously important to all of us, to all of our institutions, because they have experience in the field of digitization. Andreas is a person, a rare person in the museums community who is able to jump into institutions from one place to the next and to help institutions at designing digitization strategies and on getting forward. And I think that's a very, very valuable asset. And I'm not just making a commercial here for Andreas and say, hire this man. I'm really saying this to praise all of those freelancers who are out there and who are ready to support museums when they don't have enough staff for the purposes that they should have. So Andreas, thank you very much for giving this presentation, this inspiring presentation. And I really wish you the very best, that museums understand what you are doing and that they will hire more and more people like you and of course yourself. Our next speaker is Kinga Tihanyi. Kinga is a communication specialist. She came to the museum world from the private sector, led the communication department of the Budapest Museum of Fine Arts for several years. Kinga played an important role in transforming the institution's digital presence, and now she works as a freelancer. So the next freelancer to speak, and I'm very curious to hear.
Hello, everybody. Greetings from Budapest, Hungary. May I share my screen? Do I need share?
Yes, perfect.
Can you see it now? Okay, let me put it on.
Yes, we can see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my perspective will be from the marketing communications aspect, and greetings again to everybody. Let me start with a personal note, not because it's a marketing trick, but of course one can sell anything with a dog, but because of the story's relevance to strategy making. My dog came into my life almost at the same time as COVID, so she did change not only my work but my life. But the story's relevance to strategy development is such that before her arrival, I spent months of preparing for her. I read about the breed, I drafted house rules, I bought loads of toys and clothes and food as you'd expect. And then she arrived, and she very quickly sorted out what worked for her and what not. So my very brief lesson from this to strategy development is that I should have spent less time in the planning phase and spent more time instead in the doing, checking, acting phases, just to pick one out of the many planning models. Here I use the PDCA model. But getting back to the museum, here you can see a beautiful interior of the Romanesque hall of the Museum of Fine Arts, Budapest, which underwent its greatest reconstruction of its history for 3 years. So when I joined the museum in 2018, thinking back now, this was a run-up to 2020 in a sense, because I was tasked with paying off some of the, or most of the very timely digital transformation that the museum had by that time. So without going into details of the list you can see there, in a little more than a year, with a fantastic team of people, we managed to implement a CRM system, developed proper websites, integrated all the digital platforms the museum used, and also built and developed a huge interactive museum wall. I'll just show you a picture of this this one thing. So here we are at the beginning of 2020 with a team that, like I said, for more than a year worked like crazy on digital transformation, which put us into, you'd think, a very well-prepared state when the lockdown came. Of course, it shocked us as it did everyone. Here I collected those vital forces that I think have helped us survive the first shocks, and also helped us settle down into this weird, special, very difficult year. none of these would be very unique, I think, and I heard many of them from other speakers. But just to re-emphasize again, one thing that helped us through that period was a very strong sense of mission. I would say as heroic as those of like medical staff in the health sector, that when people were deprived of all forms of culture, it was our deepest mission that we wanted to stay in touch with visitors, friends, and sponsors of the museum. This was a very strong rock we could build on. We also content management, very creative content management was a very strong force we had. Of course, at the beginning, like with many of you, I guess, we reused old material, or we showed shared material that have never been shared before, and then with time we had the resources and energy to come up with a new type of content. And for that to be able to do, I would like to emphasize trusted relationship and teamwork. By that I mean that when again you're deprived of the physical contact where you could go up to a colleague with a difficult task and ask for their help. I believe these times really tested our work relationships. And it was sort of natural that you would want to work with the people that you trusted and where the work relationship was tested. Here I would like to make a side note of the responsibility of leaders, that they should really pay attention to people in their team who perhaps don't have the strongest networks or are introverts, because this is a very difficult time for them, especially, or maybe more than for extroverts. Knowledge transfer for us has proved to be vital because of the obvious budget resources and sometimes other constraints to get external knowledge. So in these times when you had someone in your team who knew how to work with Google Forms, who could teach that to 2 or 3 other people, then it would no longer be a bottleneck to work with this. And my last point, the vital forces slide, is about leadership. I'm sure many of you experienced that in the first weeks of lockdown, top management was busy keeping their heads above the water. And most communication that came from them was about, ensuring the basis of, creating the framework for working from home, coming up with new rules of safety, and so on and so on. Ideally, after this time, top management communication was more sensitive to people insecurity. But during this time, I would like to stress the responsibility of perhaps mid-management or team leaders who trusted their people to do the work even without being there physically, and offering a vision. And finally, I come to my lessons I would want to take to the current future, so to say. I'm a big advocate of new normality not being a point in time where we arrive at, but a constant, a state of constant change. where we are at already. So therefore, I believe we must do everything skill development wise, mentality wise, work culture wise to turn change into advantage. Another of my favorite ideas is to position our museums as safe spaces. Of course, this depends a lot on your spaces, and Zsuzsa already mentioned that with smaller spaces, it may be more challenging. But if I just think of the Fine Arts Museum, it has such huge spaces that the idea of people turning towards nature as a safe space during the pandemic, I think museums could easily and should be positioned to safe spaces, and I think it's an opportunity for us. I think it's no surprise that I emphasize self-organizing and cross-functional teams as a key for me to carry forward because of the already mentioned constraints in budget and time. And then shorter planning cycles and a more intensive visitor dialogue. What I mean here is basically we should all have the courage of taking our services to the market in perhaps not a final, if there is such a thing, not a perfect shape, but in a shape with which our visitor can already interact with, and then get into a dialogue with. I know it's for people working in a museum is a really scary idea, and here maybe communicators and museum people from museum pedagogy can take the lead, but I really believe that we have no time for long planning cycles anymore. And finally, I would suggest we try to be less fixated on technology, not because it has such short life cycles, but because because of the visitors. They get tired of so quickly of new technology that it's just not rational to spend too much time on one specific technology, because there will be new and more. Instead, I would encourage us to be obsessed with visitor data, and there are at least three areas where most of us have to improve, is to be able to capture every single digital step of the visitor, then to be able to understand, come up with insights, have the resource to come up with insights from these data, and finally, and most importantly, use them, so build them into the planning cycle for the visitor and for the benefit of visitor experience and, of course, the museum. Thank you very much.
At this point, I'd like to thank not only Kinga, but also Christian van Juri, who has brought us in touch with Kinga and Zsuzsa and Vera, who will be next to speak. And he has called it his Hungarian task force. So a group of people who obviously know each other and who are all somehow leaders in digital change in Budapest and beyond. And I would like to thank Kinga especially for this plea to bring people together. Bringing people together, linking people, building up relationships, improving teamwork, improving knowledge transfer are all functions of good leadership. And good leadership is exactly what good digital strategy is also all about. I think this is very much the essence when we title something the comprehensive digital strategy. which also entails workflows that define different products that you want to have in your museum, such as digitization, such as communications, such as restoration projects where you have to involve transports and so on and so forth. If people don't work on the same data, and if they don't have access to the same data, they will fail. And it's already these very simple decision points where you realize how important Kinga's plea is to basically improve networking and to bring people together to look at each other and to make knowledge transfer work. So Kinga, thank you very much for this presentation. I'm very, very happy that I heard it.
Yeah, maybe, excuse me, yeah, maybe one sentence, but the very important thing what I learned from Kinga, this fascination of data, that collecting data and analyzing data. And that's something for me a quite new field. And it will help us significantly to define the visitors. So I think we will learn more and more about visitors, and we can also create profiles for our visitors, and that will lead us definitely to quality. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Our fifth and last keynote speaker today is Vera Kovac. Vera is an international anthropologist and is a cultural anthropologist and works as a museum educator at the Museum of Fine Arts, Budapest. In addition to her classic museum pedagogical work, which is children's sessions, adult guided tours, etc., Vera confidently handles digital technologies and loves to experiment with them in her daily work. She has been involved in several digital content development projects as a museum educator. Vera, I'm going to switch my screen off and you have it.
All right. Thank you, Jan. And thank you for the invitation. I am going to speak about and focus on how guided tours changed over the past year. In general, I should be able to say that as museum educators, we came in our institute, at least, relatively late to the table during the digitalization process. So we actually had the privilege of reaping the benefits of having well digitalized content that we could share and use for our museum educational content. And if I had to characterize in very generally my experience this year, I would start by saying that there is a militant side to this. So Christian calling us his troops or
task force.
Yes, task force. It's not far from the truth, because when I was confronted with a closed museum in March, the message that the world was trying to tell me was that you cannot do your job. You cannot be a museum educator without a museum space, without visitors, without exhibition objects. So if I had to characterize in one sentence what I did this past year, was fighting the environment and at this time, and trying to replicate my job in a virtual space. So interestingly, this year of change was also my fight for the constant, for the well-known, and to create those environments and opportunities where I can do what museum educators do, and that is connect personally to visitors. And that is why I'm choosing to concentrate on guided tours during this talk. And also because I would like to say something specific. We could all talk for hours about how our lives changed. I spend hours with my friends just discussing how they see their family now and if they go for walks or not. But in order to say something real, I'm going to get down to the actual way what a guided tour looks like. So I would like to show you some photographs of before and after COVID of a guided tour, to give you an impression of how our guided tours do look like. I will offer you a glimpse into those. And hopefully you're now all seeing my shared screen. This is a story of a digital turn in museum education, but also of guided tours online and offline. So when I started thinking in March about content, museum education content creation, this was a picture that kept popping up for me. This is a painting by Bruegel, who was a Flemish artist, and he created these beautiful paintings, usually of paradise, which was, you know, always a space that we dreamed of. And there is a sense of escapism in these paintings. But this particular one shows in the forefront, of course, these beautiful exotic and domestic animals. But the story that unfolds in the background is the story of Noah's Ark. And for just a video that I was creating, I asked the graphic designer to zoom in on this painting. I wondered if he could show the details in a bigger size than a life size. And he zoomed in, and I was amazed because I was able to see what I've been missing for weeks. Actually, these beautiful details seeing the paint brushes, of seeing these beautiful little hamsters that were very exotic at the time in the 17th, 16th and 17th century, but now are commonplace. This beautiful Spanish horse, those bats that we didn't really like this year. That was around April when we still thought that COVID came from bats. And of course, the group in the background stirred something in me, and that connects very strongly to what Kinga was saying, that just as in Noah's story, we entered a new world, this sort of confined space that was like the Ark, and we were all depending on each other, and we had very short time to prepare and to take on that ship what we needed. And when I realized that we can see these paintings in such detail, in such beauty, that's when it became obvious that we need to connect through guided tours to our visitors. So one tour that we give nowadays is the A Testament, A Time, which is something we really love. It's about the building of the museum, and it's the standard, the first version of how we did online tours, with a simple shared screen of a presentation, and using extra little tidbits of graphic finery, like this timeline, where I can quickly describe to our group how the Hungarian national history and independence is connected to the introduction of the museum, and finally the opening of our museum, and where we can show entire paintings with the same information that a visitor would see on the wall of the gallery, but then really blow up those pictures and have an exciting and unique experience of enjoying art. And this is something that we've been building since this June, but I will get back to this. I'm just showing you a couple of details. And as Jan has said, we've accepted digital change, then we've tried to master it with these guided tours. And then there was a point that we even managed to squeeze into 2020, was thinking further. And we actually managed to, with the help of Christian, we've managed to create a new platform for online guided tours that enables us to slowly improve and develop our guided tours in the way that our visitors have recommended us to and have asked us to. So now we have this new space where we can see not only parts of a picture and not a presentation, but we can flexibly move through these interior pictures through the actual exhibition. We can look at the pieces of art that are exhibited. We can zoom in on them by clicking on them. We can read the texts themselves, but we can also enjoy and integrate the kind of timelines and maps that we have developed in the first stage of our experimenting and discovering these new types of content. So here, for example, in the exhibition Age of Dürer, you can enjoy a test of what type of temperament you would belong to according to medieval times philosophies. But without getting too deep into this, I really wanted to show you what the visitors can and hopefully do enjoy. But I would like to now show you how this changed my experience. And for this, I will show you very quickly that the technical solutions of these online guided tours are very simple. We sit either at home, like me right now, or in the office, and in about 60 to 75 minutes, depends on how long it takes people to log in, and we provide a lot of extra time for that because a lot of our public is elderly or new to this Zoom experience. We use either Google Slides or the aforementioned Exhibit online platform and a Zoom account and a couple of extra devices to improve the experience auditively or on the video. And there is always a technical support person because we are not great technical people. We are museum educators, okay? So we need a person who is with us on the call and can help and jump in case something happens. The content of these guided tours consist, as you have seen, of the artworks, the reproductions of artworks and their details, photos of the building, and extra illustrative devices that I am hoping that in a sneaky way we will over time be able to integrate into the exhibitions themselves that museum educators don't form or shape right now. But we are shaping these virtual exhibitions, so that is something exciting and new for us. We are also adding all sorts of games that we can share and enjoy together with the participants, whether it's just a simple question and they need to guess which answer out of A, B, and C is the correct answer. They enjoy this because sitting behind the screen for 60 minutes straight without being asked a question, without being asked to participate or move is very monotonous for the visitors. And we know this because we gathered a lot of feedback. So we had, first of all, long sessions with our volunteers who spent hours watching us experience for the first time how to coordinate and how to narrate these guided tours. And then we spent 6 weeks with just inviting our community to watch for free these guided tours and give us their feedback. So something they noticed was that they felt safer in the space if they saw the other people participating, that sometimes they needed some time to get in tune with the tour. We realized that participants take notes. We now know that they have a need to receive an illusion of the museum space. This is why our newest development is so important. We're so happy to be moving in the direction that they've been showing for us. And they asked for versatile visual stimuli. And this is most likely related to the fact that people use the same device for these guided tours as they use for watching TV, for watching movies. So they are used to getting very film-like experiences. And this is why some of the presentations are 200 slides long. but they still fit into 1 hour. So to take a look at this transition, I picked 3 photographs. Here is one pre-COVID 2019. Here is one in the summer when we were on the brink of closing, but just not quite yet. And then here's a screenshot of what a guided tour now looks like. And I would like to show you a couple of these pictures because it gives you a feeling for our space and the specifics of the museum where I work at, but it also gives you an impression on how a guided tour works. You don't need to see the guide to know that the attention of these kids is being directed, is being coordinated by someone. You don't need to see a guide to immediately guess that so many people wouldn't squeeze themselves, even pre-COVID, into such a tight space without having a guide to listen to, someone to give meaning to looking at one painting and then another. And it's easy to spot a guide because they are usually the one who is separating themselves most from the group. Because the group here obviously didn't know each other, but they were standing in intimate closeness to each other. They were feeling each other's body temperatures. They could feel the breath of the other person on their shoulder. And this is all, of course, gone now. But here are some of the easy ways to recognize a guide. Someone who is pointing at an object at a museum, either looking at the object itself or at their audience, and through their gaze connecting the audience to the artwork. And then there was, of course, this strange period of change where we can see that this was not the real thing anymore. We were wearing face shields and face masks. People were trying to stand as far from us as possible and as far from each other, so they filled a huge space. They weren't able to really see an artwork anymore. I mean, if you look at this lady here with the white hair, if they are looking at these stone pieces here, she's probably not seeing anything. So this was a time of transition. And then there is the biggest change that comes with live online guided tours, where you can see that it's a completely new environment. The museum space is gone. Space is basically reduced to a Zoom calls space. The artifacts are gone. We only see reproduction of them. The participants are also disappearing. We see a list of them and the fact that their cameras are turned off. And the guide is only visible from shoulder up, no gestures, no body language, and with difficulty to connect artwork and visitor to each other. So the work of the visitor and the guide becomes much, much harder. We not only have to now imagine the artwork as it was hundreds of years ago in a completely different space, serving a different purpose than being an art object. We also have to imagine going into the building of a museum, having that control that you have to take your coat off, that you need to give your bag away, that you either need to carry your possessions in a tiny canvas bag, that you have to walk through impressive spaces that are specifically designed to make you feel small and to make you at awe at the museum. So this is a completely new environment. Here, for example, you can see a picture by Dürer, but it's only the detail. So you cannot, the guide even has control of which detail you're seeing at any given moment. And depending on the visitor, who could be really anywhere, they can, change to a view of the whole Zoom conversation where they see absolutely nothing of what's going on. So offline tours versus online tours there is a lot of elements that go missing in the online space, but there is also a lot of new things that become available. What we've seen so far was people who are very inexperienced at being in Zoom meetings. So if you look at, for example, the participants in this meeting, the girl probably who seems to be not wearing anything up top was not considering that this picture will be visible when she's quote unquote visiting a museum. And really this guy here, girl here, Noemi, she could be walking anywhere. She doesn't even need to be physically in behind her computer to look like she's participating. So what is unique to the offline experience is this sort of ritual experience of visiting a museum. The multimodal shared space where you can hear, smell, feel the temperature, you can discover the nuances in gestures and facial expression. And there is also the accountability of participants, that they really show up for the guided tour, and the performance of the guided tour is a shared performance with the guide and the visitors who go along with the guide for the whole time and at least pretend to be interested. Then what we can add, but these points that I'm sorry, I will track back a little bit. So what we have to work with, other than the feedback, is looking at how can we replicate these experiences? How can we use, for example, a 3D virtual walk from the space outside the museum in the city to walk inside the museum with our participants? How can we, and then there's the question, how can we add, what new can we add through an online experience? And this is the exciting part. We can reach new audiences, expand the content of guided tours. We can better access all participants see the same thing in the same size. We can move flexibly, show paintings, and then show some drawings that would not be available in the exhibition space. And there are, of course, a lot of questions that are open today. One important question is, are we able to establish online tours as a form of cultural consumption on the long term? Can we take this opportunity and be quick enough that people form a habit of this before they can go back to normal offline visits? Will we be able to improve the quality of online tours so that it can compete once museums open again? And how can we stay afloat in a more and more crowded online tour market where more and more museums I'm sorry, I set a 50-minute timer so I wouldn't go over time. So I will finish the tour now. I hope I didn't scare anyone as much as I did myself. And
don't bother, Vera. We have plenty of time left.
Okay, and so the last question.
Go on as you wish. Go on as you wish.
That's a dangerous thing to tell a museum educator, but I won't take it seriously. So I think finally the main question is, how daring should we be? And my answer to that is as daring as we can. Now is the time to test and to try things out. We have a public who's eager for experiences, for connecting online, and who value connection with each other, and we should use that opportunity, because trying presents always more possibilities. If we had never, I had never wanted to look at the details of that Bruegel painting, we might never have gotten to the point of getting online tours organized, and if we had never done that, then we might never have found the right software that we can build on even more. And there's always a next step, and there's always thinking further. So I encourage you to do that. And as happy as I look, I'm really tired of this year. So it would be nice to have no change for a change, but that remains to be seen. So thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Vera. This was a wonderful presentation, and it's also a great advertisement for your museum. And I just started looking at on your website in order to find out when the next online tour takes place, in order to join in. And I actually would be interested to know how you advertise it, because I didn't find it right away, but that's because I was concentrating on your talk. If you've prepared it for something that happens really at one specific time, just like our Zoom conference, or is it something that people just click on and they can do it at any time at midnight or whatever they choose to?
I am very sorry, because this is such a wonderful community, and right now we don't have this program in English. We had a couple of time slots prepared, but because we haven't been able to reach out to our international audience, we haven't been, we have actually had to cancel those because nobody bought tickets, but I can show you where it's available. And if you're interested, please email me and we will organize a tour. We have right now, we can do the tour in English about the history of the museum, but of course we are looking to prepare more and more of these. So I think I have forgotten actually to share the last slide of my presentation. And here you can see my email address as well as my phone number. So let's connect, and we will organize, if enough people connect, you know, we can also just organize a tour for this group and community. I would be very glad to do that. And in the long run, we are hoping to update our website. Right now in Hungarian, we have a program calendar, so we have several tours a week, and people can also reserve for the holidays. A lot of people are looking to connect with their families in a shared virtual space, and some people have already found us to be one of those spaces that they want to share with their family over this Christmas.
I take that as a promise, and I will definitely send you my email address, and I'm very, very much looking forward to take that tour. And that's one key message, I think, of your presentation too, that the online offers widen your reach. They widen the reach of the museum. They completely create new opportunities. And of course, we are always bound to the image of the museum being the exhibitions. And it's good this way, because the museum is the authentic place. It is the place where the real object is. And for everything else, we could have showrooms, we could have websites, we could have books or multimedia offers, but the museum stays the authentic place. Nevertheless, with this authentic place, we can make so much possible. We can create so many offers. We can, of course, have the educational offers that Vera just mentioned, but we can also provide simple facts or simple information on historic objects and so on by providing digital online collections, offering online collections and giving people access to those. So I'm always excited about this possibility, all these possibilities that come up when all of a sudden I can visit museums in Budapest or in Africa or in Australia or wherever, even without traveling. And there are people who have the objection that they don't want to divert real visitors to the web. And I think that's complete nonsense. I think the more you have seen online, the more you have this urge to go to the real place and to see it sometime. So, so I think when I have seen the first 10 guided tours with Vera, one of my biggest plans would be to have a travel to Budapest and to see this museum in real once it's reopened and once this whole pandemic is over. So in this sense, Vera, thank you very, very much. I'm going back to the screen presentation. The next thing we'll have to do, or we will do, are the team sessions. The team sessions are the topic for the next session. The session starts at 4:15, 4:15. So we now have still some 12 minutes that I'm ready to share with you. We can still discuss questions that came to your minds. I feel we have not had enough opportunity for the visitors, for the participants to raise their voices. They were always somehow squeezed into the chat, and depending on somebody to read out what they wrote. Maybe we can open the floor, Dominic. I don't know how this is possible, or if it is possible at all, and to allow the participants to join the debate. I can also finish my slideshow because that's actually in the way.
Actually, they can raise their hands. They have a hand raise function on the bottom of their screen. They have three bullet points, and they can click on that and raise their hands, and then I can open their microphone.
Excellent. Yes. So people, please raise your hands.
Yes, maybe it would be nice to hear other experiences from museums. Maybe we had here greater from the communication, museum education, but maybe somebody else would like to share with us experiences, ideas. We have here a few minutes left in the first panel. I know it's always difficult to talk, and the Zoom conversation is never easy. But maybe we are lucky today, and we will find somebody who would like to say something.
I can see a raised hand, Dominic.
Yes. Ana Alvarez, yes. She can speak now.
Hello to everyone. I was very interested in all your experiences, and I work in the Museo Nacional Thyssen-Bornemisza in Madrid, and I was very happy to meet people from the Museum of Fine Art of Budapest, because I think while they were closed, we had a wonderful exhibition of a lot of works of art from Budapest. And my experience is that I'm a web manager, and it was a very stressful experience. Can you hear me well? Yes?
Sometimes it's louder and sometimes less loud. I don't know if that's because of the microphone. Maybe you can hold it.
No, it's my audio in my computer. Sorry. And I ended up exhausted. The team was very small, and I would like to ask the panelists if you think the effort that we made during the lockdown, when museums reopened, meant a shift in the perception from the managers, from the management, to redesign digital teams and to distribute more staff. That was my contribution. That the experience is good, but it was very stressful, and sometimes I think that the rearrangement of staff was not internally adopted or assumed.
Well, I think that generally we can observe that museums have reacted to all these challenges in a very different pace. There are some museums who are very quick, like think of Alex Chubaty, who immediately had something prepared. She looked at her online database. She finished up her digitization project. She then had these letters handed out to the club members of her cricket club, who started transcribing things. so there are museums who are extremely responsive, and they have created already a surface on which they can work. And there are, of course, other museums who have more bureaucracy and who have more difficulties at adapting to such challenges. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why we're sitting here together, to exchange ideas, to show each other what's possible, and to motivate ourselves. I don't know if that really came to what you were pointing out, but that was what crossed my mind. Dominic, I think there are more people.
Yes, there is Coven Smith.
Hello, thanks for this. It's very early in the morning for me here in the States, but I'm curious. What we've seen from some research here in the States is that especially smaller museums with particularly unique programmatic offerings are finding that actually their reach has increased during this period. That they are finding, whereas they thought of themselves previously as being primarily very locally focused institutions, that they've found engagement with their programming far beyond, in fact, outside of crossing national boundaries. And that has actually led to, in some cases, some surprising, new revenue streams that were not expected. And I'm curious if any of the panelists have seen that, where you encountered sort of reach or engagement that you weren't expecting, that went sort of beyond and above maybe what was even possible in the physical space. Thank you.
Tihanyi, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you for this contribution. Vera, did you want to respond, or did you have something in mind?
Regarding the reaching audiences, so what?
What's it bloqué? C'est bloqué, ouais.
In our online guided tours first, but ever since the past 2 months, I would say we had smaller interest, meaning that we had 4 or 5 guided tours a week with around 5 to 10, 15 participants, which is also nice. We're enjoying connecting with that many participants as well. But we're also thinking that museums need to look, now that they are closed, they need to look towards becoming more entertainment spaces as well. So outside the working hours, and to look at how they can be integrated into people's evenings and weekends. And that is something that we're trying out now this month, and we're seeing better numbers on evening tours and on weekend tours. But this is, of course, something to consider because our working hours are 95 job for us right now.
Thank you, Vera. Excellent. We have one more question from Hassan Raini, I think. Hassan,
hello.
Hello.
Hello, John. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your organizing the program. It's very nice for me. I just say something, only a small note about my experience about the digital strategy in some Iranian museum. It was very nice for me. So in this month, I saw some museums that you can see some museum in Instagram platform, and they can respond to visitors sometimes during the night, sometimes during the all of the times can respond and communicate with visitors and with the people who maybe sometimes not visitors, maybe some interested people now.